going to present analysis of available data, which is one of the lessons as part of social work research. Introduction. Available data on secondary data are collected by someone other than the researcher for purposes that differ from the researcher. Governmental as well as non-governmental organizations collect a large amount of data about crime, health, population, birth rates, death rates, and the like. Another form of secondary data are documents in different form, including articles of journals, books, magazines, letters, memoranda, diaries, etc. In social work, fieldwork records are a rich source of secondary data for social work research. These data can make significant contribution to the knowledge base of social work. Objectives of the lesson. On completion of this lesson, you will know about sources of available data and the process of analyzing available or secondary data. Sources of available data. Primary data means original data that has been collected by the researcher, especially for the purpose in his or her mind. In other words, data collected by researcher from the original source first hand. Primary data may be collected by an organization or investigator or an enumerator. Those who gather primary data may have knowledge of the study and may be motivated to make the study a success. Secondary data or available data are documents in different forms. It includes articles of journals, books, magazines, letters, memoranda, diaries, etc. Based on sources of data, we can classify secondary data as data about crime, health, population, birth rates, death rates, and the like collected by the governmental as well as non-governmental organizations. Primary data is gathered by researchers focusing directly on the objectives in mind. This helps ensure that questions are relevant to the objectives of the research. However, it is possible that there may be bias in selecting some questions, whereas in secondary data is only susceptible to bias introduced in the choice of data when it is used again. Secondary data about crime, health, population, birth rates, death rates, and the like collected by governmental as well as non-governmental organizations are basically quantitative in nature. Therefore, it can be analyzed using the various techniques of analysis of quantitative data. Secondary data in the forms of documents like articles of journals, books, magazines, letters, memoranda, diaries, etc. are analyzed by a technique called content analysis. A large number of researchers collect only primary data. They concentrate on the data which they have collected for their studies. Thus, most research reports do not include secondary data in their findings even if it is required in their studies. It is a good idea to use secondary or available data if it explains the results based on primary data further and contribute to the research findings considerably. Secondary data is the data that has already been collected by and readily available from other sources. Such data are cheaper and more quickly obtainable than the primary data and also may be available when primary data cannot be obtained at all. Advantages of available secondary data. First one, low cost of data collection. Secondly, comparatively, it needs lesser time for collection of data. Thirdly, it helps to make out gaps and deficiency. Fourthly, it helps to improve the understanding of interpretation of the results. Disadvantages of secondary data. Firstly, it hardly ever fits in the framework of the data analysis based on research objectives because of unit of secondary data collection. Secondly, it is mostly classified, thus individual data cannot be regained. Thirdly, accuracy of secondary data is not known. Fourthly, it may be outdated. Data are collected for a number of reasons, and much of these data are available to social work researchers. First of all, a major source of statistical data are central, state, and local governments that can collect data for either administrative purpose or for the purpose of periodical evaluation of their programs or services. The Ministries of Human Resource Development, Labor and Employment, Rural Development and municipal corporations are repositories of vast amount of secondary data. Universities and educational institutions where researchers at different levels are undertaken regularly as part of their curriculum are yet another important source of secondary data. The non-governmental organizations that collect data as required by the funding organization in the form of need assessment, program planning, and evaluation of programs or services for client services are yet another source of secondary data. Content analysis. Content analysis is a method of analyzing data collected by someone else than the researcher for different purposes. One can analyze the content of letters, diaries, newspaper articles, minutes of meetings, and the like. Hence, the name content analysis. Broadly defined, content analysis is any technique for making inferences by systematically and objectively identifying specified characteristics of messages. Objectivity refers here to an analysis that is pursued on the basis of explicit rules that enable different researchers to obtain the same results from the same messages or documents. In a systematic content analysis, the inclusion or exclusion of content is done according to consistently applied criteria of selection. This requirement eliminates analysis in which only materials supporting the investigator's hypothesis are examined. Content analysis is a method of analyzing secondary data such as field records, articles published in journals or newspapers, letters, diaries, etc. It consists basically of coding, tabulating, and analyzing of content of data obtained through secondary sources. For example, we might analyze the fieldwork reports of students to see if certain types of students have more knowledge base in social work than do others. Or we might review the dissertation submitted by social work students to examine the methodological characteristics of the dissertations in terms of nature and sources of data and research design. Content analysis is particularly well suited to the study of communications and to answering the basic questions of communication research. Who says what to whom, why, how, and with what effect? This was quoted by Rubin and Baptev in the year 1989. Purpose of content analysis. The content of documents and other material are analyzed for different purposes. They may be analyzed by their characteristics, causes, and effects. Accordingly, specific purposes of content analysis are categorized as under. Purpose of ascertaining the characteristics of content is to describe trend in communication content, to trace the development of scholarship, to disclose international differences in the communication of content, to compare media or levels of communication, to audit communication content against objectives, to construct and apply communication standards, to aid technical research operations, to expose propaganda techniques, to measure readability of communication materials, to discover stylistic features. Purpose of ascertaining the causes of content is to identify intentions and other characteristics of the communicators, to detect the existence of propaganda, to determine the psychological state of persons and groups, to secure political and military intelligence. Purpose of ascertaining effects of content, to reflect interests, values of population, to reveal focus of attention, to describe attitudinal and behavioral response to communications. It should be remembered that any single study might have one or more of these purposes. Sampling in content analysis. It is often impossible to analyze all documents or communication pertaining to the subject selected for content analysis. Content analysis has some serious limitations so far as its reliability and validity is concerned. Theoretically, the methods of analysis and quantification should be so clearly defined that different researchers would arrive at the same conclusions when analyzing the same documents. But reliability is something that can be realized at the cost of the quality of analysis of the documents. Just counting the number of times a word appears in documents in a specified period of time does ensure reliability. Not this is only a very superficial type of analysis, because the same word carries different meanings in different contexts. The basic method of increasing reliability of classification is to specify clearly the characteristics of the statements rather than the words that are to be placed in a given category, and to use many examples drawn from the documents being analyzed to illustrate what kind of statements are to be considered as representing a given category. The steps of content analysis. The steps of content analysis are: 1. Selection of the topic to be analyzed. 2. Selecting the media from which data are to be analyzed. 3. Constructing a coding scheme. 4. Deciding the sampling plan. 5. Deciding the coder's reliability. 6. Analysis of data. The first step in content analysis is to select a phenomenon to be analyzed. For example, one might decide to analyze the status of women, or one might select the subject of persevere portrayal of elderly people. The next step is to select the media from which the observations recordings are to be made. The important issue here is the selection of media that are typical or representative of what is available. In the third step, the categories are coded. The categories can range from simple dichotomous system in which presence or absence are noted to several mentally exclusive categories in which differentiations are made on a range of phenomena such as the marital status of the portrayed character and physical background. Sampling units of analysis is other step. The task here is to choose either to code every reference to the context in question or to select discrete events through method of sampling. For example, one might select all articles covering the topic published in journal over a period of 20 years, or one-fourth of the articles on the issue under study over a period of 20 years. In the next step, a researcher trains his coders to get the highest order of reliability of content analysis. Reliability of content analysis becomes more important when the inferences are made for generalization. Lastly, we analyze the data. In most of the cases, analysis of data is presented in a summary form. However, inferences of content analysis with the help of numbers and percentages become very specific and clear. Units of analysis. The units of analysis commonly found in content analysis are a word, a theme, a major character, or a sentence or paragraph. Out of these units of analysis, a single word has been considered as most convenient unit of analysis, because coding the presence or absence of certain words in documents can be accomplished easily and with high degree of reliability. The precondition for using a single word or unit of analysis is that the single word has to qualify as a valid indicator of the measurement of the phenomena. The theme as a unit of analysis refers to the major subject matter of an article or a document. An article can be characterized as having a primary theme. Article or journals, for example, can be characterized on the basis of status of women or community development as major themes. Main character as unit of analysis is turned to document a cast of characters such as movies and television programs. The fourth unit of analysis is sentence in paragraphs. Social work students' responses preceded and followed by social work educators' comment can be coded as congruent or incongruent. Such comments or responses often contain more than one idea, and this may make the comments and responses more difficult to classify while maintaining the categories mutually exclusive and intercoded reliability. Coding schemes. The most important phase in content analysis is to develop a coding scheme that can be used in analyzing the documents. Coding schemes vary according to the documents being studied and research question of the study. Coding categories should be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. When it is possible to put every relevant element of the document into a particular category, it is called as exhaustive. On the other hand, if a particular element of the document falls into one and only one category, we call it mutually exclusive. Application of content analysis. Using the method of content analysis, Vijay Lakshmi et al. Reviewed 194 articles published in the Indian Journal of Social Work between 1971 and 1990 and identified the trends in content, subject area, and methodology of research articles. In order to demonstrate the process used in the content analysis, the article is reproduced in abridged form. Methods. All the research articles published in the Indian Journal of Social Work between 1971 and 1990 constituted the universe for study. The unit of analysis for the review was an article. In order to control the cyclical trends because of publication of special issue or fluctuations in the research priorities, all these articles were listed by the name of the first author and serially numbered. In all, 813 articles were published during January 1971 through December 1990. The universe is divided into two time frames, that is 1971 to 80, 430 articles, and 1981 to 90, 383 articles. And a proportionate stratified random sampling method was used to select samples from each time frame separately. In view of the constraints of time and manpower, 194 articles, that is 23.86%, were selected for the study. Classification of categories. The following categories were used in the analysis. Background characteristics of authors, which comprised gender, rank, institutional affiliation, geographical location, writing collaboration of the authors of articles. Second, the research articles were classified into the following categories: source, that is primary, secondary, and so on, and nature of data, that is quantitative, qualitative, and so on. Nature of the article, whether it is empirical or non-empirical. Empirical. Under this subject category, the following subcategories were adopted. Firstly, experimental. Studies primarily concerned with cause-effect relationships through the use of experimental designs. Secondly, quantitative, descriptive studies having as their purpose, through the systematic collection of data, simple delineations or assessments of phenomena, evaluation or isolation of key variables. Third, exploratory. Studies that have as their purpose the formulation of questions for subsequent research and the development of hypotheses, clarification of concepts, or the enhancement of an investigator's familiarity with the phenomena or setting for more precise future research. Fourth, case study. Studies that involve in-depth consideration of one person, group, project, institution, agency with intensive investigation of the factors that contributed to the characteristics of the case. Non-empirical. This category included the article that discuss research either in general terms or draw implications from one or more studies, or those articles concerned with the development or testing by empirical means of research technique or a measurement device. Coder reliabilities. The analysis was carried by going through the articles as per the article reading schedule prepared by using the above categories. Firstly, the article reading schedule was applied to a prior sample of 30 articles by two coders, the second and the third authors, independently. An intercoder reliability test was used to find out the reliability between coders for the different categories used in the study. The results showed a high rate of agreement between the two coders on characteristics of research articles, author's background, and areas of research. However, coding the articles with regard to research design and sources of data showed some variation. The definitions of categories were revised and a high level of agreement was obtained later. Sources and nature of data. It is found that majority of the articles was based on primary data and was of a quantitative nature, followed by a few qualitative articles and studies based on secondary data. However, it can be seen that the percentage of articles based on primary data and quantitative studies showed a downward trend during 1981 to 90. Studies based on evaluative research designs were reported during both the decades, and the proportion of evaluation studies showed an increase over the two time frames. However, single subject research designs, which are becoming a popular in social work practice research, have not been reported in the articles of the study sample. Quantification. The trend towards quantification in social science research is a well recognized fact. Articles in the study sample were examined to get some notions about the nature of the data and the kinds of statistical analysis employed. To obtain a picture about the trend pertaining to quantification, a four-fold classification was devised. Roughly 48% of the total sample articles employed some sort of statistical analysis, which ranged from ordering of data in percentages to the use of descriptive and inferential statistical analysis. The remaining 52% of articles were discussions or studies whose data do not reflect any sort of statistical analysis. From this perspective, an examination of sample articles in the present study revealed that articles dealing with topics on family, child, and social work were in the large number. That is, 19.6% during the first decade and 20.6% during the second decade, while community development took second place next in the order during the first decade. Articles in the area of personal management and labor welfare took second place during the second decade. However, the percentage of articles published in these specific areas indicated a decline over the two decades. Articles in criminology and corrections and medical mental health settings figure in a considerable percentage in the first decade, though the proportion of the articles published in the former area indicated a downward trend as compared to the latter. An attempt was made to analyze the study sample regarding the presence of articles devoted to women's issues. For the purpose of this study, women's issues were defined as topics that acknowledge the unique status of women and their problems as spouses, mothers, clients, and workers. For example, rape, abortion, and wife abuse were some of the issues that were included in this category. The analysis revealed that less than 15% of the articles published in the Indian Journal of Social Work during the sample period were devoted to women's issues. The percentage of articles that focused on women's issues registered a slight increase, that is, from 13.7% in the first decade to 16.3%, average 15 in the second decade. Conclusion. It is evident in this review of articles that incorporation of methodological improvements to better the quality of research is necessary. There is a need to refine both the conceptual foundations and methodology of social science research. It is encouraging to see that a considerable number of social work educators contributed articles to the journal, and more so during the second time period, that is between 1981 to 90. The practitioners and educators should be able to use research as a tool to measure practice effectiveness, improve intervention skills used by them, and to refine methodology measuring the outcomes. This is necessary as the evidence from the study suggests that these functions in general did not manifest in the content of the articles. The review further indicates a slight increase in the articles based on qualitative data over the 2 decades. Qualitative designs provide detailed data and facilitate an understanding of the subject's point of view with flexibility in studying social life. This was quoted by Chandwick et al. 1984. There is a need to strengthen the research approaches in this direction. To sum up, we can say that content analysis is a method of analyzing secondary data. One can analyze the content of letters, diaries, newspapers, articles, minutes of meetings, and the like, hence the name content analysis. It consists of coding, tabulating, and analyzing of content of data obtained through secondary sources. The contents of documents and other material are analyzed for different purposes, such as ascertaining the characteristics of content, causes of content, and effects of the content.